Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com. And today we're going to talk about, oh my dear, another reissue of reissues of a reissue. It's Itzhak Perlman, the complete RCA and Columbia album collection. Now, where to begin with this? As you know, Perlman is basically an EMI artist, and EMI issued a big box of Perlman, all of his EMI recordings, which is huge. But earlier on in his career, when he was just starting, he made records for RCA, and during his career, he made a few for Columbia as well. Now, a lot of people think that those earlier RCA recordings represent some of the best work he ever did, and I happen to agree. They are absolutely wonderful, and they're also better sounding because he hadn't quite become the hotshot virtuoso who wanted all the microphone balances to be, he is with the microphone, he's fiddling away, the microphone's here, the orchestra is like way back there. But he's actually always been a very sensitive partner in chamber music, and his chamber music recordings are excellent, and some of those are on Decca, so he's all over the place. And then he moved to Deutsche Grammophon, which also issued the Itzhak Perlman box. And he's a great violinist, let's just face it. He's a great violinist and a great musician. And one of the more interesting things that's happened with the violin world over the past years is that on the one hand, these great romantic violinists have started to sound kind of old-fashioned or less, I don't know, because maybe the period instrument movement has sort of changed the way we think about violins, and we don't want that rich, sensual sound with the wide vibrato and all that stuff. But on the other hand, what's happened is that there are no great period violinists who have encroached on the 19th century romantic repertoire, which is what everybody wants to hear. It's what gets played in concert. There are a zillion wonderful, wonderful young violinists out there. Everyone from Hilary Hahn and Josh Bell. I mean, they're not even that young anymore. They're getting older, right? But I wouldn't say that they have the kind of huge personality and superstar quality that Itzhak Perlman has. I mean, and has had throughout his career. So it's funny because there are a lot more great pianists, I think, than there are violinists. Partly because there's much more repertoire if you're a pianist than there is a violinist. Not more in quantity. I'm talking about quality. The violin repertoire, I mean, so much of it is just crap. Let's face it. I mean, there were just these violin composers who wrote violin concertos, and they wrote it for themselves, and they didn't really care about things like, melody and form and orchestration, and, they just wanted to show off with their violin. And piano composers they tend to write better music. I don't know why. You might take issue with that, but really think about it. Think about the romantic violin concerto repertoire. I mean, both of them. You know what I mean? You got like Mendelson, and then Brahms, and then Tchaikovsky, and maybe the Bruch. That's the 19th century. It's absolutely unbelievable. But you've got, think about, Beethoven wrote one violin concerto. He wrote 5 piano concertos. Brahms wrote 1 violin concerto. He wrote 2 piano concertos. When you get away from composers who were themselves violinists, then you begin to find that their violin concerto concept is a rarity. It's a rarity for a couple of reasons. It's a rarity because you can't writing for the violin is terribly difficult, and violinists have very personal techniques, and they tend to rewrite anything that they don't like so that it fits their technique. And, it's hard. I mean, Dvorak, remember, when he wrote his violin concerto, he went crazy. He wrote it for Joachim. They didn't like the form. They wanted him to redo the first movement. He said, go screw yourself. So Joachim never played it. And that's the kind of stuff that went on with violinists in the 19th century. And so composers only write violin concertos at their peril. Anyway, all of which is a long way of saying that Perlman is really maybe one of the last of his breed, the great romantic violin person. He has as big a personality as he does technique musically. He's a great musician. And also, one of the things that's happened too is that the way violinists personalize their timbre is by using vibrato. That's what vibrato does. It personalizes the timbre. I mean, Heifetz, you can tell Heifetz in a second because his vibrato is personal to Heifetz. It's their fingerprint. And all of the hoo-ha from the period instrument people about not using vibrato and only using it as an ornament has simply made violin concerto playing anonymous. That's their great success. They've managed to make one violinist sound like every other violinist. I mean, even the great period violin guys, look at Andrew Mancy. What's he doing? He gave it up. He's a conductor because there's no way to play that repertoire, basically, and personalize it the way a great romantic violinist can personalize the romantic violin concertos. You could do it, but any violinist who tried would be destroyed by the musical community. And frankly, what on earth do you think they did back in the day? They used vibrato to personalize their timbre. There is no other way. It's the way that you make color on the instrument. It's really kind of fascinating where we are with violinists. I think about it quite often because I get millions of records of all these violinists, and they're very well done and they're very well played. You can't tell one of them from the other, but Perlman you can hear because he sounded like Perlman. He always did. That is not to say there are not issues with this particular box, and we need to talk about what's in it and hopefully get to the point. Now, this set has 18 CDs. The problem is Perlman's Columbia and RCA repertoire is rather limited, and it's all been issued before. There was an original jacket collection, and then after the original jacket collection, it all got put in this really nice, inexpensive 9 CD box, cheap, that has most of the same stuff you have in this 18 CD box. And so you have to ask yourself, what's the difference with the 18 CD box? Well, as is usual, they've decompacted the 9 CD box to spread it out over more CDs on the 18 CD box and charge you more money because this is a complete edition with original jackets. It's like, if anybody cares. And this has, like I said, most of the same stuff. I mean, the things that you really want, the major chamber works and concertos, they're in both boxes. The rest of it, the differences are fairly minimal. But let's go through it disc by disc, as we always do, and see what we get. So I'm pulling them out here, and okay, you ready? Here we go. Prokofiev, oh yes, Piano Concerto number 2, and Sonatas for Violin and Piano numbers 1 and 2 with Vladimir Ashkenazy. Great record. The concertos with Erich Leinsdorf, that also showed up in the Erich Leinsdorf box, the Erich Leinsdorf Prokofiev box on RCA, so you can get it a million different ways. It's absolutely splendid. I have to also double check, by the way, the booklet, because with these sets, you're never quite sure if what they have on the top here is what you're going to get on the disc. And indeed, the original jacket does not reflect what's on the disc, because what you get on this disc is the Prokofiev and Sibelius concertos. The Prokofiev sonatas are on another disc. So, see, this is what happens when you trust these people. Anyway, the Sibelius is also fabulous. I mean, the finale's a knockout. He certainly did not do a better Sibelius when he remade it with Previn. So, as far as disc 1 goes, you're in excellent shape. So that goes there. Next, the Tchaikovsky Violin Concerto with the Dvorak Romance. These are consistent. I mean, isn't this just annoying? I mean, it really is. It really is. Now here's the point. The Prokofiev Violin Sonatas used to appear on an LP with the Prokofiev Second Violin Concerto. Now, are they all by themselves? Yes, they are all by themselves on a separate LP. I mean, a separate CD. And that's it. That's what you get. The 2 Prokofiev Violin Sonatas. So, did you get both of them with the concerto? Let me just see. Concertos for piano numbers 1 and 2. Yeah. Go figure. I don't know. I don't understand it. I mean, that's 52. Is that 52 minutes for the two violin sonatas? So maybe that was the earlier issue. Who knows how they did this before? It's absolutely nuts. Okay, so you get the Perlman Ashkenazi violin concertos. Oh, now here we are. Yes, this is with Previn and the London Symphony, the Lalo Symphony Espagnole, and Ravel's Tzigana. All right, now I have to talk to you about the Symphony Espagnole. I hate the Symphony Espagnole. I think it is a dysfunctional piece of garbage. Has some nice tunes. Lalo is one of those truly, truly second-rate composers. I mean, do you ever see the guy? He had no chin. How do you trust a composer with no chin? He tried to grow a beard to make his face longer. It didn't work. He had no chin. Chinless composers are never great. It's that simple. That's the rule. But even beyond that, I have been trapped in the Symphony Espagnole so many times I can't even tell you. And trapped in a way which, I mean, it is a torment, the likes of which I can barely, oh my goodness. Peepo, get down from there. Come on. I'm having a cat emergency. Just a moment, please. Okay, we're back from the cat emergency. Now, Peepo, who you've met before, I believe, is a horizontal cat. In other words, she doesn't climb. She doesn't like to jump on things, which is really very convenient because I don't want her to jump on things. Well, she jumped on something. It just goes to show that you can never be secure. And she's old. She's like 15, 16 years old, and she never jumps on things. But she just jumped up on the window ledge. And I'm shocked. Do you understand? But she's a good girl. And I think we've resolved the cat emergency, and we can go back, yes, thank you, to the Lalo, and she sheds everywhere, to the Lalo Symphony Espagnole. Now, like I said, the Symphony Espagnole is basically a piece of trash. It is junk. It is garbage. It is horrible. It goes on forever. It has 5 movements. Smart violinists back in the old days used to chop out one of the movements or 2 of the movements to make it shorter, which is always a good thing in this piece. However, I was trapped in the Symphony Espagnole because I've had to play triangle. In the finale, you wait until the finale. Actually, there's some triangle part in another movement too, I think, but oh God. Anyway, it was a piece that for some reason was a favorite of little, child prodigy Suzuki violinists throughout, like, since the dawn of time. And their parents would pay to have a community orchestra play the accompaniment with their prodigy du jour, and so that they could tape it and make like audition things and whatnot. And so I was often corralled into playing the percussion part. It's triangle and snare drum basically in unison for the whole finale. I think I moved this thing back too. Wait a minute. There we go. Maybe that's better. But there's more to the triangle than you think. Let me just explain something to you here. See, here is your typical Grover triangle. It's sort of the standard issue triangle. Now, it comes with this clip, which is really very neatly designed, so you can put your finger under it like this and hold the triangle, freely. And there's a trick to hanging a triangle, too, because you have to tie it in a particular knot and pull it through here so that it hangs this way while you hold the clip this way. Otherwise, it's going to be like this, which makes it impossible to play correctly. And triangles have come a long way since the days of like the Liszt piano concerto, because now you don't just get, a little metal thing you hit it with. You have this surgical kit of triangle strikers, which are color coded. I mean, you get 3 of each color, and you can use one to strike it in individual taps and one to do rhythmic patterns and rolls, and it's so complicated now. But the reason you have these is because what you may not realize, let me show you, is that triangles really do not readily adjust their volume. Mostly they are, you have to use the right kind of stick. A light stick or a heavy stick is what gives you the difference in sound. You can hit it harder with a light stick, but you're not going to get much of a difference. Let me show you. It's very, very interesting, actually. So here's a light stick, right? And that's what you get. And You could whack it and make it harder, but why bother when you can take your heavy stick, the heavy stick, and you see? So so it's easier to control volume with the weight of the stick. Now, the Lalo Symphony Espagnole. This is where we are. The Lalo Symphony Espagnole. The finale. Are you ready? Here it goes. Da 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 dum. Da 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 dum. Da 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 dum. Da 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 dum. Da 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 dum. Da 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 dum. Then the violin comes in. Da dum ba dum ba dum ba. Da da dum ba da 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 dum ba. Da dum ba dum ba dum ba. Da da dum ba da 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 dum ba. Oh God, it's a nightmare. It's just a nightmare. It's horrifying. You're stuck in it doing that forever. So that's the Symphonie Espagnole. And I can't even hear it without having this Pavlovian reaction. I'm done with it. So, Perlman's is a great performance of the Symphonie Espagnole. If you like chinless composers who write boring violin pieces, get the Symphonie Espagnole. All right, let's look at the next one here. Let's see, next page. We're getting there, folks. Hang in there. Oh, yes. Paganini. This is actually a fun record. I like this record. It's Perlman with John Williams, the guitarist, doing duets. Paganini's Sonata for Violin and Guitar, the Sonata for Violin and Guitar, another one, and then let's see, Sonata Concertante for Violin and Guitar, and Mauro Giuliani's Duo Concertante for Violin and Guitar, and more Paganini, the Cantabile for Violin and Guitar. Now, I happen to like Paganini's music. I think he's a much better composer than people give him credit for. Yes, he's Italian. He comes from the bel canto school and all that, but he knew how to write for the violin and the guitar, and he wrote some really, really nice pieces. They're very, very enjoyable, and that's a very, very enjoyable record. It's wonderful. It really is, and I'm trying to see, wait a minute, let me just see here, and that was not entirely in this box. Not entirely. They had some Paganini caprices. They had a little bit of Paganini, but that whole disc wasn't in here. So there's something new. Isn't that nice? Then you get the Beethoven and Dagnani Serenades for string trio with Perlman, Zuckerman, and Lynn Harrell. Those were in the other box, and they're wonderful performances. I mean, the Dagnani is delightful. The coupling with Beethoven is great because Dagnani, as a composer, as you know, was heavily, he was a conservative composer who knew his classical stuff, his Beethoven and his Brahms. And so I think that makes a beautiful coupling, but some short playing time. It really is. Let's see what it is. Is it? 48 minutes. You know, they had it with other stuff. Then we get the Isaac Stern 60th anniversary celebration. I mean, who cares? It's Bach's double concerto and stuff with Maida in the New York Phil. It's in a Vivaldi concerto for 3 violins and the Mozart Symphony Concertante in E flat. That's a big deal. With Stern and Zuckerman, that's a beautiful performance. But I'm okay. The Chausson Concert, absolutely great. This was a fabulous disc, and when it came out, there were not many recordings of this around, and to have a violinist of Perlman's caliber and a pianist like Jorge Bolet and the Juilliard Quartet all teaming up to do this, that was a big deal. It was a big deal for the repertoire and for this piece. So, more power to you. Of course, on the other thing here, hold it. In here, I think, let's see, was it on here? No, it wasn't here at all. Okay, so that's great. I'm just making sure it wasn't on here because you can never really tell. No, not there. Superb. So that's worth having. Brahms Violin Concertos, Barenboim and Perlman. Perlman's terrific. Barenboim is kind of soggy. I've never liked these performances. I think Barenboim's pianism is just a little slack-jawed. You know what I mean? It could have a lot more rhythm and point and energy and vigor, all the stuff that Perlman has. Then we get Mozart duos with the Leclerc Sonata, This is with Perlman and Zuckerman, a beautiful, beautiful disc. Two great violinists playing great violin music. And again, it's very interesting. You want to hear these things played on period instruments by two scratchy violinists? No, we don't. We absolutely don't. What could sound more awful? And those are here. That disc is in this box too. Then we get Cinema Serenade. Oh yes, lots of violin arrangements, with John Williams, the composer this time, and that stuff is in that other box. Selections from Cinema Serenade are in the other box because there are two discs of it. And Perlman, it's nice that he does these popular things. It's one of the things that's made his name so big. Let's face it, doing these pop music, expostulations, and I have no problem with it. But I wouldn't listen to it all that often. You may feel differently. The playing is beautiful. The tunes are terrific. But, now we get another soundtrack, Hero, composed by Tan Dun, which some people pronounce Tan Dun. I don't know what it is. I don't care. I don't care about the music. It's got tons and tons and tons of music that has nothing to do with Itzhak Perlman. Perlman rediscovered violin sonatas by Handel, Hindemith, and Leclerc, and then they put with Paganini, Bloch, Sarasate, Faya, Ben Chaim, and Bazzini. Let's see what's here. Mozart duo, Cinema Serenade, more Cinema Serenade, enough Cinema Serenade to last you for the rest of your life. Here we go. Perlman rediscovered 3 Paganini Caprices, the Ben Chaim Berceuse Staradit, Pablo de Sarasate. Most of that stuff is in here, yes. So there it goes. Some of that stuff, some of it, the Hindemith and some other things, was in the other box, by the way. Then we get yet another fabulous soundtrack, Memoirs of a Geisha, with John Williams, and this has Yo-Yo Ma and Perlman, and it's, they make these to sell the soundtrack albums, and some of the soundtracks are very beautiful. I love film music. I like movie soundtracks. So that's okay too. But, one of the things, when I did an interview with Andre Previn, he did at the beginning of his career, he did a wonderful, some wonderful soundtracks, including I think Elmer Gantry was his big one. And I said to him, you were such a great film music composer early in your career. Why haven't you done more? And he said to me, well, he said, film music sort of prevents the elongated thought, is what he said. In other words, he felt that you couldn't do large forms. You couldn't let the music be the music. It's always restricted by the fact, obviously, that it's accompanying a particular scene and it has to be tailor-made for that particular scene. And then, of course, most of the time you're not even going to hear it while the scene's going on, which is why you have soundtrack albums like Memoirs of a Geisha. But that's why while I love film music and I love film music albums, and there are some film music composers who wrote extended pieces for their films. They were allowed to, people like Bernard Herrmann and Shostakovich did for his films. It's a question of the kind of film that it is and what the role of the music is in it. And so, you never really know. But anyway, that was for that. And then we have Axmann Perlman doing the Mendelson piano trios. Great! Mendelson piano trios are wonderful, wonderful, wonderful works. You should know them. You should have them. You should love them. And this is a very fine performance of them. Then there's this disc called Eternal Echoes, Songs and Dances for the Soul with Cantor Yitzhak Meyer Helfgott. Now, I frankly never heard this disc. I don't remember it. And it's a lot of sort of Jewish cantorial stuff, which is kind of interesting. It comes from Perlman's roots. I think I'll play it maybe once and not ever listen to it again, but that's me. You might find these songs and dances eternally echoing in your soul, and if they do, go for it. Then finally, we have Perlman collaborations, little snippets of things with Yo-Yo Ma, Rudolf Firkuzny, Pinchas Zuckerman, Seiji Ozawa, Yuri Timirkanov, and John Williams. So it's like all kinds of little things that he did at one point or another. The Tchaikovsky Serenade Melancholique involves Scherzo with Timirkanov. You have Dvorak in Prague. Remember that disc? You get the Romance again in F minor and the Humoresque. and that's with Yo-Yo Ma, the Boston Symphony Orchestra, Seiji Ozawa. Then you got, let's see, a bit of the Dumke Trio with Rudolf Verkusny, one Dumka. I mean, what's the point of that? And a Slavonic dance transcription. And then you have, with the Israel Philharmonic, the 60th anniversary gala concert, Johann Halverson's Passacaglia for violin and viola with Pinka Zuckerman. And then, let's see, classic Perlman Rhapsody. This was a compilation of some kind. The William Walton Canzonetta from Henry V with the Boston Pops and John Williams. And finally, Air and Simple Gifts, where they do John Williams's Air and Simple Gifts with a cornetist, Yo-Yo Ma, and Gabriel Montero piano. I mean, no one buys these things for that stuff. So there you have, here we go, the complete Sony and RCA box. Much of which, as I said, much of the most desirable stuff has been issued before, but some things have not. And whether that justifies purchase of a much more expensive box than the first two Perlman boxes, the original jacket collection and this cheapy 9-disc set, is completely up to you. I happen to think, I mean, what are the things that you get that you didn't have before? The Mendelson trios, the Chausson Concert, those were important albums. Are they enough to justify buying all of this other stuff that you already had all over again? I can't tell you what to do. I wouldn't do it. Personally, I would not do it. Of course, I did it so I could tell you about it. But it seems to me that some of these labels are kind of getting to the end of their ropes and coming up with ways to package and repackage and repackage the same old stuff over and over again. But we can keep on listening and enjoy what we get, and oh look, and try and survive the Symphony Espagnole here. And my triangle just went to pieces. That's what happens with these things. They fall off of their little strings here. And if that happens in a concert, which I've seen it happen, but not to me, you have some serious problems. I don't know. Thank you for watching this ordeal. We had a cat issue. We had triangle problems. We had duplication of repertoire. I mean, this is the world of classical music recordings today. Welcome to the insanity in which I live. Thank you, and talk to you later.